Hey everybody, it's Matt from RideHub, and on this episode of Trail Physics, we're going to be looking at the DERF Slab here in Squamish. So before I moved to Squamish, the first time I saw this slab was actually video of a bunch of 6 and 7-year-olds riding it here. And I was pretty impressed. I thought it was awesome. And then when you actually get up close to it, you see it's quite a steep slab. So this is on a trail called Fred, which is one of the lesser ridden trails here in Squamish. If you're from out of town, people tend to stick to some of the more staple trails like Half Nelson. Fred is a really great pedally technical trail, and it's the way you're gonna access this slab. So today what we're gonna do is look at some of the common challenges we see with people who try to ride this slab, and then we'll give you some tips to help stay safe and in control. So let's go take a look. So take a steep rock move, make the entrance really complicated or difficult, and now we've got a really challenging move. From the entrance to the rock slab, you can see where the problem is. It's entirely uphill. Then as we get up that hill, we only have about a bike length to get the bike under control before we're committed over the edge. So first things first, let's just take a look at the line we're going to use to get up on top of the obstacle and then get over the edge. So as I'm approaching the DERF slab, I'm obviously presented with the significant uphill rock. Now, the interesting part here is we can make this easier on ourselves or more difficult. I prefer riding into difficult moves with the straightest line possible. That'll cause me to change my line selection to maximize how straight my entrance will be. On this move, we're going to stay closer to the outside with our front tire and cut across the rock up towards this side. If I stay towards the inside, once I get to the top, I'm going to have to execute a sharp steering maneuver, and that's something I'd like to avoid at the top of a difficult move. I'm going to take my front tire wide around the outside, cut across, up, over, use this root stump here in order to sight my line. Now I'm actually approaching on a dead straight trajectory right to the edge of the rock. As I get up to the top, I have to make just a slight steering correction to the right, and I can carry on over the edge. So in terms of line selection going over the slab, it's very wide at the top and much more narrow at the bottom. At the bottom, you'll see that there's a lot of rock boulders here on the left, as well as some chunky areas on the slab in the middle. I want to avoid having the G-out happen while my tire's on those rocks because there's a high likelihood I'm going to get a pinch flat. I'm not nearly as concerned about these sharp edges here because I'll be traveling quite quickly and quite lightly over them. Looking at it from the top, you can see we cut wide to the outside, straight down on the inside, past this root, and over the edge. If I took this inside line, I'm cutting very much to the inside. I'm now actually pointed in this direction, which means once I get up to the top of the rock, I'm having to make a very significant steering maneuver before I get over the edge. When you're going really, really slow and making sharp steering maneuvers, it can become really, really challenging to keep the bike under control. I'm always considering how I can make my entrance line as straight as possible. So now that we've got the line, let's look at the techniques we've got to use. Now this entrance rock is really, really steep, which means I'm going to have to be in a good climbing position in order to get up it without slipping or losing control. Now, if you do want to do this seated, you're just adding one more layer of complexity because you now have to drop your seat in the very short space of time at the top. So I'm going to suggest we do this with our seats down. With our seat down, it's actually going to impact our body position a little bit. With our seat down, the technique we're going to use is called a crouched climb. Now, with how steep this rock is, if you shift your body weight really far forward, you may actually unweight the rear tire and you're going to lose traction. So part of what we do in a crouched climb is we actually move our hips just a little rearward to load that rear tire so we have the traction we need to get up the obstacle. If I move my hips too far back, I'm going to feel like I'm looping out and the front tire's coming off the trail. And if I'm too far forward, the rear tire is going to spin. Now, the other thing we need to consider is because we have such a short period of time between the entrance uphill and the descent on the other side, what type of pedaling technique we're going to use. Because this is a really punchy uphill, people will have a tendency to want to put a full pedal stroke in order to get themselves up and over the obstacle. That's okay, but you also need to remember that once you get and crest the top, all you should be doing now is a ratcheting technique. If I'm still putting in full pedal strokes once I've gotten to the top, there's a risk that as I get to the edge, I'm going to be standing heavy on one foot, and that's not the position I want to be in as I roll over the edge. Remember, the intent of a ratchet is that when I finish the pedal stroke, I'm in level pedals. Now, if you get up the obstacle and you decide not to ride this, you have a very short period of time to make that decision. It's only about one bike length long. So be really, really confident that if you're going to get off your bike at this point, you're going to get off to the side and not fall forward. This route, for instance, would absolutely clip your pedal. So lots of little obstacles in this one bike length that help make this even more challenging. Once I've gotten up over the entrance rock and I'm now on the level part of the ground, as I get onto this flat section, you'll notice I end up getting taller in order to spot my line over the edge. Let's say I didn't look at this obstacle first and all of a sudden there's a rock or log in the middle of the trail. The last thing I want to do is roll in and hit that. So what I'm going to do in order to roll over the edge isn't necessarily a definitive technique, but just a combination of body positions. I'm going to start tall as a means to look over the edge. If I need to, I can then put in a good ratchet pedal stroke to create some forward momentum. Once I've got the momentum and I know I'm committing over the edge, I'm going to get lower into my body position and allow the front wheel to roll over the obstacle. That's going to put me in a slightly rearward body position, but you'll notice I'm not hanging off the back of the bike. As I come down the rock, I'm going to move myself a little bit more centered on the bike so that I can deal with the G out at the bottom, which is significant. If I'm hanging out off the back of the bike or I'm leaned far forward over the handlebars by the time I get to that G out, it's going to be a really bad day. The thing that concerns me the most is that I'm going to be in a good low ready position down and throughout the obstacle. It's going to help keep my center of mass lower, it's going to improve my stability and balance, but it's also then going to allow me to extend my arms and legs as I go through the G out at the bottom to brace against all those forces. The two common body mistakes we see on this is people will actually ride over the edge and they'll hang out off the back of the bike. As the bike then rolls down the obstacle, when they get to the G out at the bottom, their body weight is behind the bike. It causes a really rapid weighting of that rear end. The front tire becomes really light, and now they've lost their steering and their ability to brake. The other common issue is people are too tall as they roll over the edge. And what this can create is a sudden feeling of weightlessness as your center of mass falls forward down over the slab. And that may not be a feeling you're going for. The reason riders tend to be too tall as they come over the edge is because this makes them go really slow. When a rider's traveling slower, they tend to be taller with more weight into the handlebar, which helps improve the slow speed bike handling. It's okay to be tall before, but as we roll over that edge, we definitely want to get our center of mass lower. What's important here is to acknowledge the limitation of this rock. Now, when you're going to ride a steep rock move, the first question you need to ask yourself is, how steep is it? This one's pretty steep. The reason the steepness is important is because it's going to help us understand whether or not I have any chance of slowing down on this rock or not. And for this one, the assumption I'm going to make is no, I don't have the ability to slow down. What that says to me is I have to be ready for the speed and momentum that's going to happen as I roll down this rock. What that does is helps me make a good decision regarding the run out. You'll notice on this move, it's very straight. It gives me lots of time after the move to bring my speed back under control. A common error that happens here is people will panic brake because they're afraid of the speed and momentum that they're going to get. They start panic braking on the rock itself, which causes the tires to lose traction. And then there's the potential at the bottom to lose control because the tires are no longer rolling, they're now sliding. Now, one technique we can use for braking is something called dragging our brakes. What this does is keeps the brakes slightly engaged the entire way through the obstacle so you can feel just the little bit of resistance it's providing. It's not meant to try to slow the bike down. What it's meant to do is limit the sudden reaction of grabbing at the brake. So now you just need to modulate or adjust how much you're braking. We can feel a little bit of that resistance, and it can sometimes help prevent people from panic braking because they're already starting to brake. Besides trying to slow down on the slab, the other common braking problem I see is panic braking at the end. Because of the height and the incline of this rock, it's gonna make you go really fast. And if you're not ready to go that fast, you end up panic braking right here at the bottom. When someone panic brakes, the typical output is they'll slide because their body position wasn't correct before they started braking. If I start going real fast, jam on the brakes, and I'm not in a good braced body position to deal with all those braking forces, I'm gonna wipe out here at the bottom. You've got lots of time to slow down. Just be ready for it. And that's it. That's the DERF Slab here in Squamish. Thanks again for watching this episode of Trail Physics with RideHub. If you've got any questions, please post them in the comments below. And if you like this video, please click the like button and subscribe. It helps us continue making this content. Now put down your phone, close your computer, go ride your bike.